Making a synth pad from scratch is actually super easy, and you can make it super ambient, have lots of texture and depth and emotion with some really simple techniques. In this video, we're going to be working with Ableton Live Drift, which most people have access to even if you're on Ableton Intro. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a world of possibilities that you can take with you in these techniques. For Patreon members, you can also download the example patch down below if you just want to drag and drop and get started right away. There's also a link to my Drift preset pack, which is over 100 presets and a bunch of different styles of sounds, which you can get right away. I also want to give a huge shout out to the Patreon members that support this channel in a huge way. Thank you all so much for your support. Now let's get into it. Okay, so to get started, we're going to go to Instruments and Drift. Now, Drift came out around Ableton 11.3, I think. So if you're on Ableton 11 or 12, you probably have it. It's with Intro Standard Suite. And it's basically like an analog-inspired subtractive synthesis, which is a very traditional, more basic form of synthesis. It's a great synth. It's limited, but that also is kind of its advantage because you can experiment without getting overwhelmed. And right off the bat, in the default settings screen, you might notice that these things are turned up, like they don't look like they're zeros, for instance. If you just double click on them, they'll become zeros. And you probably want to do that because in the case of like this setting here, which is probably up, you'll notice if you try to change your filter, even when you pull the filter all the way down, you'll still have a pointy sound. And a lot of people get really confused by that. But by default, these things are on. So I'm going to double click it and turn it off. And then you can go to these three little dots right here and click on that and go to Save as Default Preset. That's really neat because, yeah, if you wanted to go and change, alter the filter with these settings down here, you could do that. But on a more neutral setting, maybe you just want those things off so it doesn't confuse you. I've seen people get confused with that. So now we've got that handled, we can go over to the oscillators. And Drift gives you a bunch of different oscillators, including some really cool, like a Moog-inspired shark tooth, saturated, which is really good for bass. But if we're going to build a really ambient, evolving pad sound, I actually like to go with triangle. Triangle has a really warm sound to me, so I'm going to go with that. Also going to turn it down so these match the same octaves. Both of these oscillators are on. And when it comes to shapes in general, don't get too overwhelmed. You might pull up other kinds of synthesizers and see lots of different shapes, analog, digital, different kinds of shapes. There's sort of something that changes the tone of the sound, and you can change them later on in making your patch. So don't get overwhelmed. Now, once we pick that triangle, you'll also see the shape here. And when I press down, you can actually see the graphic changing on the bottom there, which is pretty cool. Now, this one simple parameter right here, right off the bat, it's the thing that can make your synth evolve, make the sound change and grow and modulate and make it something that doesn't sound as static. But if you're not used to Drift, you might not know how to do that. Now, what you do is you look next to shape and you'll see slide. That's not really useful for us right now. We're just going to go for LFO. LFO is the thing that provides movement. So when we click on that, we'll go all the way to the right side here where you've got your LFO. And so this thing is going to move shape like we did before, but it's going to use it with the LFO. Let's just turn it up to 100 so we can really hear it. Now, as you hold down the key, that's happening because of the LFO. If I turn up its rate, it happens really fast. So that's how you can tell what an LFO is doing. LFOs provide movement. Now you can set these things any way that you want, but for this video, I want something slow and evolving sounding. So the rate could really matter to us. I'm going to go for 0.2, which is pretty slow. I'm also going to change the shape for the LFO. You've got a drop-down menu here as well. And these all have kind of different characteristics to them as well, like when you change a sound based on a shape. Wander is kind of smooth like sine down below there, but it has a randomness to it. So it's not as erratic sounding if you were to go for, let's say, something like sample and hold, which could have a very sort of computery kind of sound to it. Like I said, these LFOs have their own characters to them in a way. But I'm just going to go for Wander, which has a smoothness to it, and it's going to be very slow. So it's moving, but not dramatically so. I should also mention that this little area over here is kind of like a little mixer. So you can adjust the levels between the two oscillators based on like what you want it to sound like. So we can change that around, and that's totally up to you, like what you want to do. You can get your balance there, and we can have other things affected by the LFO. One of the most fun things to do with that is the filter. So if we go over here and we click on this, you'll notice that these different window panes, if you click in these little gray areas, it changes this screen right here. So things are kind of hidden in a way. And I'm going to go and click on frequency. And I'm going to go for this sort of lower mid-range sound. So I'm going to go for like a high cut around 430, high pass around 40 hertz, clean up the lows a little bit, maybe turn the resonance up to like 0.5. And now you can see this general shape where you're taking a lot of the high frequencies off. And now we're really going to get into the secret with drift, which is another little hidden menu where it says mod. It's a little tiny square. You have to hit it. It's going to reveal all this stuff right here. And what we're going to have is these drop-down menus where I can select LFO. I want the LFO, which I'm selecting right here, to affect something else by a certain amount. So if I select LFO, I can have it affect by a certain percentage, something like the low pass frequency, which is this thing over here. I can also have the LFO, which I'll select again. You can see you get 3 different options you can use simultaneously. I could also have that affect the low pass resonance, which is this little thing over here. It kind of creates this little spike. And so the LFO, which is wandering around, remember it's called the wander LFO, it's going to affect that sound. And I'll do this for 30%. And then with this third option, a really cool thing you can do is velocity. So if you're playing the keyboards on your MIDI keys or your pads, or you're writing in notes and you're adjusting those velocities on your MIDI notes, you can have that affect the character of the synth. And this is one of the most important things you can do for having an evolving pad sound. Go for velocity and tag it to the rate of that LFO. Remember when we made that LFO move around a lot? All that variation that's created when the rate goes higher or lower, right? We're going to have how hard we hit the keyboard, the velocity, affect the rate of the LFO. And I'm going to turn it all the way up. And I'm going to tag it to LFO rate right there. So now our pad is going to respond to our playing. A lot of people don't get this far because they never learn what an LFO is. So if you've gotten this far in the video, you are in such good shape. You'll notice that when you play the keys, it's moving. And that's what we're trying to create. Now it sounds very dry. It doesn't sound much like a pad either, but we're going to get there right now. So I'm going to go over here and click on another little hidden window right in this gray pane. This is our envelope, our amp envelope. It's the only envelope we got to worry about. I'm just going to adjust these settings. The envelope is kind of like the DNA of the type of sound. So plucks versus pads versus keyboard sounds versus leads, they tend to have a different ADSR, or attack, decay, sustain, release. I did a video about this, which I'll link in the description below, which is a really great video to get you started with it. But in that one, I did it with wavetable. So I might have to do another video, with drift, but it's really simple. We're just going to have a slower attack. That's the big part of what a pad is. So I'm going to go over here to attack. I'm going to set this to 3 seconds or 3000. I'll just type it in. And kind of like the muscle memory I have from doing so many patches and preset packs is 3659. So what that means is I have 3 seconds on the attack, so it's slower. I have 6 seconds on the decay, so it's a very slow decay. 50% on the sustain, because I'm going to hold down keys. I want it to be indefinite if I need it to be. It's a pad. I'm performing it, And then a very, very slow release. So when I let go of the keyboards or the MIDI note ceases, the sound really drifts away. And now if I play a nice chord here, the sound is just slowly drifting in, and there's a lot of movement. And if I hit the keys really hard, it's moving more. So if you hit the keys harder, it's going to move more. That's the secret a lot of times. It's just a simple velocity. Feel free to experiment away. Once you understand just the first things we've talked about, you can run with it. But there is so much more, and it's so simple that you can add on from here. It's really cool. Notice how we have a patch that's set up. And it sounds kind of interesting and funky and weird, but it also sounds kind of dry. And that's because a lot of great patches that you're going to create are going to come from the effects that you're marrying to the sound as well. And what I'm going to do is just go up here. I'm going to use kind of a hidden effect, which I recently found, and I use it on vocals and stuff. It's really amazing. I'm going to type in phaser or flanger. And the reason why I say this effect is hidden is because it's not really in the title, but it's a really important effect. If I drag and drop this over, you'll see it says doubler. So this isn't just a phaser flanger plugin, it's a doubler plugin. I'm going to turn this on, I'm going to turn warmth all the way up, and I'm going to turn time down to 40 milliseconds, half it. Now you'll notice when I play a chord now, do you notice something different about the sound? If you're wearing headphones right now, you might notice it's right on the sides. All of a sudden, the sound just became heavily stereofied. And if you're on an iPhone or laptop speakers, you might not hear it as much. You might hear a little modulation, but not as much. That's a really, really useful thing to make sounds immediately more exciting, is stereofy them. But you don't have to lose the center impression of the sound totally. What you can do is use the dry wet knob, or what I like to do, which is go parallel. Anything that you select, whether it's a MIDI effect, an audio effect, an instrument, you can stack into parallel lanes in Ableton immediately. You just highlight that thing and hit Control G or Command G on Mac. Right off the bat, it's inside its own new box. If I go to this little button right here, you can see it's been given a lane, a path. If I right click and go to Create Chain, now I have my original center channel back, or center like channel. And so I have the dry and the double signal. You're just getting a thicker sound with that doubler effect at play, and we can stack more effects from here. The next effect I'm going to show you is such an amazing effect for ambient pads. And by the way, if you're finding this video useful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. You would not believe how much it supports the channel. It doesn't cost you anything at all, but it really does tell the algorithm that this content is worth your time. So if this video is helping you, hit those two buttons. Thank you so much for watching. Let's keep going. So I might have buried the lead a little bit in this video because you could arguably make a video just about Ableton Live grain delay. It's an amazing delay offered on basically any version of Ableton. It's really, really generous that they did that because this is an amazing effect. It's not like your typical delay sound. I'm going to drag and drop it into this little box down here and make its own separate lane for this effect. So unlike traditional delays that are going to echo rather cleanly, the grain delay is breaking up the sound of your ambient pad into like 1 in 50 millisecond snippets, little grains of sound, right? Like grains of sand. And it's just perfect for creating these like dense, evolving textures because it's randomizing the elements of the delayed signal. It's perfect for ambient, experimental, atmospheric sounds. And it's really easy to use. So you're looking at the screen, it might look like a lot of stuff in front of you. All I want you to do today, and you're going to immediately hear the sound, we're going to turn the spray up to 260 and the feedback up to 30. So notice there's more sort of like dirt on the signal. Hear that breaking up in your headphones? That's that kind of granular sound. It's really, really nice. Now, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, you might have missed the last video that we did, which was using similar things about pads. We talked about large space chorus, which is a really useful preset in just the stock Ableton Reverb for these big ambient sounds. I actually kind of did my own patch called Steady Space, which takes away some of the modulation, which I think helps keep the sound a little bit steadier sounding by not having so much modulation. And I'm going to add that in parallel as well, 100% wet. You can always adjust the balance with these little blue things. These are volume faders right here. They're just very small. So maybe we'll do that now. We're going to turn some things down because also we've actually added on a bunch of new signals that are all stacked in a row like this. So what that could actually do is sort of overwhelm our gain staging. We could start clipping. So a really useful thing, if you haven't grabbed this before, is utility. Utility is really good for managing the gain on your balance, especially if you're going to stack up a bunch of effects and start building a big sound. So I'm going to pull this back on the gain and I'll take about 10 decibels off. So now we're going to manage our gain a little bit better. So now we have this really big evolving sound. And what I also want to show you is that once you've put this together and you want to push the sound even further back, make that ambient pad really breathe, is to actually put everything through a reverb as well. It's going to push it further back. What I can do is just click on steady space. I know I have it parallel here, but I'm going to hold down Control, click and drag it, and duplicate it over everything. So you're sort of gluing all these parallel effects together by placing a reverb right in front of it. And for an ambient pad, you know, you have a slow attack anyway, so it's all about pushing it further back and giving it even more dimension. Now, if you recall from the beginning of the video when we talked about building all these parallel effects, anything that you have highlighted, anything at all can be grouped into itself. So in that case, I'm going to hold down Shift, click on Drift, and grab all of my effects, everything in this chain. I'm going to hit Control G. And what this did was it create a box around everything else, everything that we've done. And if I click on this little button again, you can see you have an instrument chain. So I can add on other things to this pad and create an even more textured sound. One of the best ways to add texture to a pad is using texture, like Foley's, waves crashing, wind, thunder, rain pattering down. A really funny one that I actually really like is bacon grease. So the sound of people cooking bacon. And you can see I've got that sound effect right here. It's so easy to add this to a pad sound, and it adds a lot of texture and organicness to the sound, even though that's not a word. You just grab the sample that you got from really anywhere and just drag and drop it into that window. Ableton will create an instance of Simpler. You can loop this sound effect so it plays indefinitely like your pad. You just click on loop. You're going to turn up fade and turn down loop. And it's going to create this little triangle shape. I can make it bigger with this little button here. So if I solo this, we can hear our sound. There's also a really cool effect called Redux, which is sort of like the lo-fi effect in Ableton Live if you haven't checked it out yet. And if I drag this and I make sure that it's falling right next to my bacon grease sound, it's going to create a lo-fi bacon grease, which is, you know, awesome. And it's going to sound darker. And so what was bacon grease kind of becomes like something like space interference or something. I don't know. But it's creating something that's different in the sound. So you can layer those two things together now. Now, in a similar way to adding reverb to something so that it glues everything together, which is what we did on this chain, you could also add an effect after this big grouping. And a really, like, kind of a nice thing I like to do is grab auto filter and just kind of place it right after everything. Notice I'm not putting it inside any of these window panes. I'm putting it outside of it. And so it's going to affect both of these chains together. So it's kind of gluing that sound together. And I'm just going to pull down the frequency with this right here, maybe somewhere like right here. And now we have a nice, beautiful ambient pad. Lots of texture and sound, really cool. Really awesome low notes. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my videos. There's a lot of cool videos you might have missed if you're new. In the top left corner, all about chords. So if you struggle with chords, highly recommend checking out that video. If you're trying to build chords from just single root notes, that's a really cool MIDI workflow tip in Ableton. That's the video in the bottom left corner. And if you're really trying to up your music production game, I highly recommend checking out the Patreon and the link in the description below. I've been on Patreon for years. There's Ableton vocal production presets, a whole vocal production course. There's all kinds of presets for Ableton synths, exclusive videos. There's a huge, massive MIDI library. It's also a really cool community of very talented, supportive people. You can go there, ask questions, and grow. Highly recommend checking it out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have fun making music.